Welcome everyone, it's Vaporsmith Dragamar. Now it's time for more of my storyline, Sithandra and the Titan of the Apocalypse. Last time we covered some of Sithandra's storyline, how she discovered some of the scrolls through her combat, and how she brewed a potion to get insight into the Elder Scythan, and um, this potion also grants her combat stats and her appearance and stuff. She is quite she is a beautiful yet complex sorceress. Um now in this episode we are going to be covering Sithandra meets the Master of Terror. In an enormous dark cavern on a large island, Zithelion was sleeping, his multiple eyes shifting beneath his crimson eyelids. He was dreaming about the scrolls of the apocalypse, and Sithandra, the only sorceress to rise to the Scythan elite because she both impressed and repulsed him. Why such a beautiful and powerful sorceress would waste her time trying to protect such base creatures as demons and humans confused him. If she just tossed away her compassion for them and supported his plans, he would like her again. He had a horrible feeling, however, that her caring was part of who she was, and he could not rip it from her. So here, you're not only getting to see Sithandra meeting the Master of Terror, but also you get to see some of the thought processes going on inside of the mind of the Master of Terror, because the Master of Terror himself is conflicted as to what he should consider Sithandra. However, he doesn't have a conflict, he doesn't have a conflict of interest when it comes to some other creatures. So he had to return to his original plan. He awoke, grabbed an immense black shining scythe of his own crafting that was said to have more power than the relatively weak one Death had, out of an immense chest inlaid with human skulls. Then sliced open the cavern floor and raised an immense emerald green pirate ship covered in green flames. The clash between the most powerful sorcerers in the world begins on that pirate ship. With black sails stood the blazing evil Emperor Zithelion, his entire body covered in eerie green flames, illuminating his dark crimson face with 8 gleaming black eyes, gleaming black needles for teeth, dripping in blood, and his powerfully built body covered in black robes, emblazoned with emerald dragons in a vast ocean, forked lightning clashing across the black stormy sky. He was pleased by his defeat of Vincent in the year 2040 after he deemed him unworthy to use his power. He had gained the power of a god since the downfall of the domination of humankind. Zithelion looked across the fierce, stormy ocean and the sky black with clouds. The large island, he knew were Sithandra, Kelsara, and Vaporsmith, those treacherous cowards that would dare stop his carefully honed plans of unbridled destruction, plans he spent untold years forging. He wanted the humans and their vision of the world to fade forever, and be replaced by his vision of a world of pure darkness not tainted by mercy. Sithandra was the worst of the three, as she had mercy and power the likes of which was unknown by the other Scythans of her race, and it was her that he would target first, much as he would hate it, as he did not want to admit women had power. As they approached the coastline, one of his crew members, a skeletal green minotaur wielding an immense axe, said, "Captain, we are approaching this coastline. What should we do?" He looked the Minotaur full in the face and said, "Prepare the cannons. We are going on a full-scale raid. We need to make an entrance if we're going to make the impression I want, Zalgraf." "Yes, Captain." He went below the molten red deck, checking his cannons carefully and loading the cannons for the upcoming invasion. Sithandra was walking on a path of gray sand bordered with very tall seagrass. There were black clouds and lightning in the sky towards a graveyard by the vast ocean. Sithandra reached the coast, which was covered in shining black sharp rocks near the edge as smog wafted off the ocean. Think I should replace that. Okay. The coast was covered in shining black, sharp rocks near the edge. As smog wafted off the ocean, Sithandra sighed and looked across the ocean. She could see a group of eerie green ships on the horizon, shifting in the high waves. She wielded a legendary weapon, a gigantic scythe with an emerald flaming blade and a smooth black handle. That was a weapon hand-selected and honed by Death himself, called Jasithis, known as the Eternal Reaper of the Forsaken. Just as she reached the beach, she saw scythes materializing out of thin air and knew that something was wrong. Death himself, with his skeletal face and plain black robes, materialized. He didn't have his scythe, though. Sithandra, he said, I want my scythe back. Give it to me. She smiled a horrible, leering smile, with her enormous, white, razor-sharp teeth that seemed to distort her face, her snake-like emerald eyes on him, then said, You're going to have to fight me for it, she taunted. Go on now. Why, you pest. Very well, said Death. I'll fight you for it. Sithandra said, To make this even more fair, I will give you your scythe. You will see if you can keep it. She handed her scythe to him. Astonished, he said, Why would you give up your greatest weapon to me? Sithandra replied, It's because I know I can defeat you with my magic alone. I don't need your scythe to defeat you. That's for weaker sorcerers. Death exclaimed, But I'm Death. Why aren't you frightened? He asked. It's because I don't want to be known as just a woman. Women are known for being weak failures by the other Scythans. I am everything but that, and I don't want anyone to confuse me for it. Death raised his scythe and said, Very well. Let the battle commence. Sithandra evaded all of it easily and fought him with her sorcery, blasting him with her fiery breath and her fists. In a very short time, Death was already defeated as if he wasn't there. Death was crumpled on the ground, breathing heavily. He looked up with his skeletal face and said, How could a woman defeat me so easily? Sithandra looked at him with a piercingly cold gaze, then said fiercely, You know I'm not just a woman. I just changed my body. The time has come for you to understand why I am the chosen of the sorcerers, so determined to find the worst dark sorcery that he traded having sex and his own life for it. She punched him in the face with an echoing blast like a cannon, shattering the bones in his face. You know there's a reason I could impress the other Scythans. Very well, said Death, a deep loathing in his voice. I will return when I improve to take back my scythe. As Death hobbled away, Sithandra muttered, If he ever improves enough to even challenge me, I don't think he knows my true strength. I took it easy on him. Sithandra walked along the coastline until she came to the graveyard by the sea, where there was a polished obsidian statue of an enormous reptilian human that dominated the scene, wielding a massive scythe enchanted with emerald-cursed flames of the scythe that she now wielded. She stowed her scythe on her back, but didn't need to crouch to read the plaque, as it was at her eye level. Vincent, Emperor of the Scythans, born 1605 to 2040, died 2040. Sithandra drooped around the monument with Kelsara and Lord Vaporsmith, the king of demons. Sithandra placed a bunch of black roses at the base of the massive statue, then said, What is the plan to stop Emperor Zethelion, since Vincent is no longer here to keep him in check? Lord Vaporsmith, who was a tall, thin, blue, salamander-like demon that stood on two legs. He had crimson eyes and black fangs with a flat nose, sighed deeply. An incredible look of despair crossed his face, and he seemed to spread through them like a chill. Vaporsmith said, We need to find special scrolls to defeat Zethelion. It would be incredibly difficult. The only one here, I believe, who can obtain these scrolls is Sithandra, because of her incredible strength that she wields as one of the chosen, the Scythans. So Sithandra is important, said Kelsara in her deep, smooth voice. Kelsara was a thin-faced, dark blue, lizard-like woman with a suave, mocking smile. She had an hourglass figure like Sithandra. She wore jet-black jester robes covered in crimson skull designs. She wielded double knives and had a scythe on her back. Now, what is our next step? She said. We need to make it to the coastline, past the swamp on the far side of the graveyard, replied Vaporsmith. The swamp leads to the coastline. The pirates, they know a lot about dark sorcery. We need to learn those spells and become pirates before we have a chance against Sithelian. Kilsara said, that's all interesting, but I want to talk about something else. Did you hear they have some fantastic seafood and glorious amusement parks over where the scrolls are? She said, with relish, slowly licking the blood off of one of her daggers. Sithandra stared at Kilsara, then spoke in her deep voice. Why are you talking about seafood and amusement parks when Sithelian's on the loose? She flinched from the strength of Sithandra's voice, then replied, I like to joke around a lot. I like talking casually, then sneaking around and killing some men who think I'm innocent afterwards, she said with enthusiasm, licking her other dagger, then without warning stabbed Vaporsmith with it. Making him flinch, he yelled, What did you do that for? Kilsara just stood there, giving them her intense, smoldering stare, then laughed. Suddenly, the storm they were in raged harder than before. The ship sailed towards them with incredible speed. Forked lightning clashed through the sky. An enormous, luminous, green pirate ship with black sails was sailing towards them. Enormous waves clashed through the ocean as it changed from deep blue to black in color. She saw an enormous vampire-like beast wearing large black captain's hat with dark crimson skin, enormous, fierce, multiple black eyes with scarlet snake-like pupils and enormous blood-soaked black dagger teeth. It wielded a scythe as large as Sithandra's at the bow of the ship. It had a huge army of ghostly green, spectral creatures on the ship, his brilliant scarlet scythe shining through the darkness, even as the eerie green light from his army of creatures lit up his sinister, gnarled face that was leering at them. Sithandra could tell even from a distance this was the legendary evil, known as Sithelian, an evil so destructive. It was said to be a myth, and yet she knew the story that Sithelian was so evil that those who saw him did not live to talk about it. As Sithelian's ship approached, his eerie scarlet face lit up with the green light of some of his followers. The sphere so strong it seemed to root her to the spot, but knew she had to move if she wanted to save herself and her world. Sithelian's ship had finally came. He dropped anchor and let down a steel bridge with chains the size of tree trunks. He stepped onto the sand with his enormous spiked cleats. Sithelian's gleaming multiple eyes shined through the darkness. Sithandra asked, Are you the great evil mentioned in the texts? Of course. You cannot possibly understand what those texts truly mean. I am a fate worse than death. I will kill you and everyone else with you. You must find a way to escape or die. It's that simple. The time has come for me to show you the true terror. He snarled, his crimson skin suddenly catching fire. As he said it, he seized Sithandra so fast he blurred and tossed her straight at the statue of Vincent, causing it to explode into rubble, then breathed massive torrents of cursed flames over the ground, setting the entire coastline ablaze with black flames. I'm going to make this concept sink in. It's time for me to back up my words with actions. He took his scythe, impaled her with it, then ripped it out, blood slowly pouring from her chest. He changed color from deep scarlet to jet black, his crimson eyes burning through the darkness. He slashed her with the scythe so fast it appeared he was slicing her with multiple scythes. Sithelian grabbed her after slicing her face and body bloody by the throat and lifted her into the air with one enormous black-clawed hand, then began strangling her with it. As he strangled her, he said, I need to show you why I'm the leader of the Master Leviathans, the most feared dark creatures in the world. Sithandra was trying to pry his claws off. Her throat, the dark blue of her face, was fading to jet black, as she was struggling to pry off the claws with more pain than she had ever suffered. Then, as Sithelian was strangling her, he summoned a black flaming sword and stabbed her repeatedly with it, making her fall screaming in pain before plunging the sword in and leaving it in her chest. Said Sithelian. He picked her up by her neck as she coughed up blood and tossed her with one enormous black-clawed hand at one of the ocean-side ruined houses, causing it to shatter into massive flying splinters of wood. Sithandra tried to get up, but just managed to flip herself on her back, the blade still impaled in between her large breasts. As she struggled to remove it, Sithelian spoke. Very good, he leered. So you're in actual fight, though your friends are not. He began to laugh. Sithandra slowly pulled the sword out, then stowed it in a pocket of her robes. Soldiers poured in from all sides. Helicopters came in, shining their spotlights as police cars lined up at the beach. One of the officers with a megaphone announced, "You are under arrest. Put your hands up." Sithelian dropped his scythe with a horrible leering smile and said, "I don't need weapons to kill you. You seem to be delusional enough to think I actually need to try to kill you all. I will make this as spectacular as possible," he said, licking the blood off his fangs, his slit-like nostrils flaring, his robes blowing in the breeze. He lunged at them with incredible speed, breathing flames, punching them so hard they got blasted backwards 10 feet each time he punched. He ripped the helicopter down from the sky in one fluid motion, smashing it with incredible force into the ground, causing it to explode into flying shards of metal. Then he punched and kicked his way through their entire army of humans, killing all of them with flaming punches, burning them all with black cursed flames, taunting them mercilessly, relishing in their suffering. He summoned a massive black stone summoning gate from the ground. Enormous green spectral werewolves, minotaurs, chimeras, dragons, skeletal weapon masters, and Project G-Imps came from it. He fought them with lightning speed, using dark magic to coordinate them and blast them into pieces before they could even react. After he finished with them, leaving all of them dead, he turned around and said, "Now, Sithandra, it's time for your punishment." "Why did you have to kill all the humans?" said Sithandra. "They can't harm you." "True, they can't even scratch me. I just like to kill enemies who can't fight back for fun," said Sithelian. "Even you asking why I killed the humans reminds me of why I hate you, Sithandra. You care like the other women I hate, those who care about the safety of the innocent and the helpless." "Why are you so strong, though?" said Sithelian in wonder. "A human woman with a body like yours would have melted from my strength alone." Sithandra replied, "It's because I'm not human. I am one of the chosen of Vincent, a creature so powerful it makes death seem like trivia. I am the only woman in their group. I am looking for others to follow in my footsteps. This body was created with sorcery. I can change it at will." She muttered some words in a strange-sounding, hissing tongue. Suddenly her curves vanished. Her body became rough and scaled like that of an alligator. Her face changed and elongated. She suddenly resembled a dark blue, lean crocodile with green, flaming snakes for hair, walking on its hind legs, except her legs were longer. She was still wielding her scythe. "This is my true form," said Sithandra. She had increased in height from 8 feet up to 12 feet. Scythans are similar to crocodiles, but have many abilities that humans have. They are also dexterous. She held up one of her clawed hands and twirled her scythe if it were weightless, despite it being 6 feet long. Sithelian said, "That explains why you're special after all." He snarled, then transformed into an enormous deep blue dragon, larger than a passenger airplane, breathing a torrent of orange flames that changed color to blue as they hit the grass and the sea plants, setting them ablaze. He charged an enormous dragon, breathing enormous exploding balls of green fire at them, causing them to fly through the air. Sithandra fell with a crash into the glowing coals of the cursed inferno. The flames spread onto the grass and began to morph into sapphire, flaming dragons and crocodiles that devoured the tombstones and the oceanside houses into ash. Before Sithelian left, he spoke once more. "Let us see if you are worthy to fight me again. If you are, you'll survive, but I doubt you will." Sithelian then began to charge after Sithandra. She heaved Kilsara and Vaporsmith onto her shoulders. It took both of her very muscular arms to hold them. She ran through the roaring inferno, past all the dead bodies, dodging giant jets of flames from the dragon that was Sithelian. The fire was melting the tombstones into molten rock. She ran through the tall ocean grass until she got to the edge near a swamp. She paced Kilsara and Vaporsmith, who were still unconscious on the ground. Sithandra drew her own scythe across the wound. Of the pain of trying to heal the wound nearly made her pass out as the heat from the flaming crocodiles engulfed her from behind. The pain of it nearly caused her to lose consciousness. Fighting to remain present, she healed the wound, but a red scar remained. Sithandra took a look at the still painful scar on her chest where her immense breasts once were, and said, Zethelian must really hate Vincent to stab a woman this beautiful just for that. I really hate what I'm doing. I'm not sure which. At the edge of the swamp she was at, firefighters were trying to fight the blaze, but their water and flame retardants were only fueling the blaze. The flames leapt onto their trucks, causing them to explode. Sithandra watched in horror, sterilized, widening in shock, and all the firefighters burst into flames, screaming and died, their faces frozen in horror as chunks of flying metal flew off the truck. Sithandra rolled to dodge the flying metal shrapnel as they finished exploding. Despite the fact she had a mastery of the dark arts and had an evil nature, she still retained some empathy for the innocent, which separated her from Zethelian and Vincent, who had killed the innocent without feeling remorse. Shaken and watching more innocent lives perish for no good reason, she moved on to try to find out where Zethelian was and try to stop the flames. She looked up at the luminous blue forge fire, raging with the heat of a blast furnace. She ran away from it and the dead bodies, though the remainder of the beach towards the very towards the very edge of this massive swamp bordered by trees. She heard a roar behind her and looked around. Sithandra saw a creature with slimy green skin, enormous blood-soaked fangs, and multiple eyes jump at her throat and knocked her to the ground. She struggled to throw it off. She slashed her scythe violently at it, but it seized it and used it against her. She started punching and kicking it, trying to get it off her. After a tremendous struggle, gotta keep this punctuation edited as much of a nuisance as this is. Trying to get it off her. After a tremendous struggle, she managed to pry it off, but it still had her scythe. She smashed the creature into the tall grass with enough force to make the ground shudder. She pried the scythe from its limp claws, then slayed it with a flaming slash of her scythe. Sithandra thought the struggle was over, but a whole horde of sinister creatures of huge variety had found her. They were strange creatures that looked like shadows. They ran through the darkness. Scaly beasts stalked the darkness with enormous needle-like teeth dripping with blood. The creatures ranged in size from small to enormous. They came after Sithandra relentlessly. She raised her enormous scythe and said, The time has come for me to show you why I am the chosen of Vincent. She wielded the scythe with incredible ferocity, slashing through them, using her scythe to blast black magic fire at them. She stowed her scythe and pulled up her fists, then began relentlessly punching, biting them, knocking back some of the creatures. She pulled out her scythe again. The creatures were causing her incredible pain. She had to kill them fast. The more she killed, however, the more creatures seemed to appear and the more vicious they became. Just as when she thought she'd outdistanced death itself, the creatures had finally all died, her robes completely stained with red, black, and green blood. She was looking around, wondering if any more creatures were going to come at her. She heard some rustling. A figure came out from behind one of the flaming trees. Sithandra said, Show herself. I'm armed. She raised her scythe. The figure approached. It was unmistakably Zethelian, his black eyes gleaming and eerily green, glowing crimson skin, face shining through the darkness. Not you again, she screamed in horror. He lunged at Sithandra, knocking her to the ground, sinking his fangs into her neck, then punched her in the face, a loud bang, knocking her out and breaking her flat nose. He then took another knife and stabbed her in the chest once more with it, then lifted her, skewered on it, and flung her into a group of flaming trees, causing them to shatter into flying embers. Then he removed the knife and stabbed her repeatedly in different places on her, stabbed her once more in the chest with the knife, then blasted her with an enormous beam of dark energy from his scythe. Zethelian looked at the prone figure of Sithandra, covered in stab wounds and bloody slashes, and every inch of her black robes with sapphire skulls on the ground, with her slit-like nostrils bleeding onto the ground, and felt a twinge of regret followed by a sense of urgency. He knew he had to swiftly gather his Project G-Imps. This is kind of inconsistent, because I changed some of it. He knew he had to swiftly gather his Project G-Imps for the Blood Moon Festival. There was no time to dwell on what he had done to Sithandra. It took a while longer as he commanded his imps to realize He felt guilt because he had slain something beautiful and potentially useful. He was not aware that he had not killed Sithandra. She was still alive but unconscious as he began organizing his troops. He grew in size to as tall as the trees as he commanded them. He assembled and armed them with staves and scythes. They assembled to fight the demon forces. They invaded the camp of the demons and killed huge numbers of tomorrow the nymphs and made the remaining ones scatter. They knocked unconscious Lord Vaporsmith, the king of demons, before setting their entire forest where they had the festival on fire, then returning to their forest to craft further plans. Later that night, Sithandra returned to consciousness. She was still disoriented from the fight with Sithelion. She hurt all over. She could barely move. She felt that the knife was still in her chest again. Once more, she slowly pulled the knife out. A black scar remained on her flat chest, covered in bloody slashes. She felt her face. It was covered in cuts. Her legs were covered in gashes. How, said Sithandra slowly, was I able to survive that? The pain of this is... It felt as though she was still being impaled with red-hot knives and being burned to death at the same time. She healed herself once more, slowly from exhaustion. It felt as though she had not slept for many nights, and experienced more pain this night than the past year, even when facing the wrath of Vincent. She had to heal herself this time before she could break the paralyzing pain, enough to stow the dagger she had pulled out into a pocket of her robes. She then restored herself to her other curvy form. She took to look like a beautiful human rather than a massive crocodile, which was her original form. Her face was still reptilian despite the sorcery. She looked down at the forms of Vaporsmith and Kilsara, which were still out cold. She revived them with the healing dark magic that she knew. They got to their feet. There was a period of silence. Then Kilsara broke it. First, so how are we still alive? I managed to save you and Vaporsmith by carrying you out of the blazing, enchanted inferno. Sithelion was sure the inferno and him chasing us would have been enough, said Sithandra. Kilsara replied, I want to explore the swamps and the coastline. I could have fun there. This isn't about fun, said Sithandra, but I can try to make it fun, despite what's going on. Deal, said Sithandra. I will take it, said Kilsara. Now let's explore the swamp that Vaporsmith talked about. Kilsara then asked, Did you give Sithelion information? I was forced to, said Sithandra grimly. I have to use the upper limits of my power in order to survive Sithelion, because he does not have mercy, only greed. Chapter 3, The Swamp of the Condemned, which we'll be covering in the next episode. I hope to see you all then, and I will also probably post some League content as well, because I have a lot of stuff I've done in that game since last I posted. See you guys then.